Click links, join channel here over at SubStars, or the various other links have a mailbox as well. So political correctness ended Star Wars. As this guy Adam Bray mentions, the George Lucas of 77 Star Wars was not a 2024 globalist progressive. He was a 60s anti-establishment liberal. There's a big difference between the two. The I've been saying this for a long time is the what the left considered the left decades ago has been completely subverted and corrupted to be the modern left is pro-censorship. They're on the side of Wall Street, big corporations, big pharma, and supporting foreign wars, where George Lucas and the old left was pro-free speech. So the current left are these, like, we're raging against the machine, but we're on the side of the corporate banking globalists. They're not the liberals. And it's weird that, so I will say that some of the modern left sees that, but they're scared to say too much about it because there's so many of their comrades who are just completely drinking this Kool-Aid, and they look around and go like, hey, we used to occupy Wall Street. I keep mentioning it because it's such a critical turning point. They used to be against these big corporations. So we're funded by Bank of America, and our Antifa signs and our BLM signs are printed out by some shadowy organization that nobody asks where the funding came from, and the van we rent. So where'd the money come for this? How come we have corporate donors now? Are we sure we're the left? It's like, I don't know if the left ever was the left. So Star Wars, it was about the redemption of Darth Vader, and the modern left is about cancel culture. Disney, even this poster sucks because it doesn't include enough. Like, the only Star Wars people care about is the original Star Wars. You've got one. You got Leia from the original, and maybe the Wookiee and the droids. It's like you got to have Darth Vader as the heart of Star Wars, not whoever the hell half these other whammons are. So Disney cannot do Star Wars because everything Lucas was about, the modern Disney is against, and some of them understand Star Wars in their lizard minds, but they hate it. And most of the people working on Star Wars now are only interested in it to push globalist toxic beliefs. It's like they do with, I don't know, Wheels of Time with Amazon or Rings of Power. They don't buy this stuff to continue the story. They buy these rights and get people to work on them just to push whatever their whatever the soup of the day is, and they do that with comics as well, of course. It's like, oh, we're marching for Superman's marching for trans rights. What is this? So when I tell these SJWs on Twitter that Star Wars, for it to be successful, it needs to look like the original, and they froth at the mouth because you go, wait, it was too white. I go, there's no such thing as too white. Yes, that's Star Wars. That's the alpha and omega of Star Wars. I don't know if that's what made it awesome or not, but that was the story. Anything other than that is something else. You're making not Star Wars. You're just making Bolshevik propaganda. And yeah, nobody gives a shit. Not Hansel, who's Lando Calrissian, but the remake version of Lando Calrissian. Nobody cared about that movie. That was the first Disney movie to lose $200 million. So I don't think the Disney version of Star Wars is going to be successful. The upcoming Daisy Ridley movie is going to probably decide the future of Star Wars. So far, their streaming Star Wars on Disney Plus has not done well. Perhaps you've seen a few of those episodes. They're atrocious. And nobody can just be honest and say, yeah, all this vagina power diversity, nobody gives a shit about. That's not Star Wars. Those are not our values. I don't know why people just can't kind of say the things that I'm saying. And Disney is running into this hard boundary of the rejection of woke. Trump getting elected is just one signal, but it was happening no matter who got elected. But now that Trump and Elon are teamed up, there's kind of a shift in the winds of pop culture. But even if Kamala got elected, woke Hollywood was doomed no matter what. The left wing loves to virtue signal, but they don't buy woke games and movies and whatever it is that they're selling. That's what virtue signaling is about. And this is a hard concept for people to understand, where they go, people say one thing, but they do another. And the left wing seems to think that while they're lying about going to see these movies and supporting all this woke cancer, that the other commies on Twitter are telling the truth. It's like that joke about how everyone's bringing water instead of vodka to a punch bowl, and it ends up to just be pure water. So for a while, entertainment corporations didn't understand why social media was so positive for woke products, but sales didn't reflect it. And maybe by now they're starting to catch on. I think maybe Bob Iger is kind of catching on a little bit. They have way too many bombing movies and shows. And Rachel Zegler's comments about Trump and his supporters shows how out of touch actors are. But, to be fair, Disney saw that and wrote an apology for her and just kind of presented it to her, with the implied threat that this is what you're going to publish on Instagram. And if I was Disney, the smart thing would be to have a policy now of, how do you tell you? Social media is so intertwined in Hollywood that to tell these people, yeah, you can't take political stances, they would lose their minds and everything would be leaked to social media. But, if you want to continue, you really have to tell them that because they're alienating way too much of the audience. And for something like Disney's already in trouble right now. Yeah, what happened to Slave Ship 1? So the Mando was Disney's chance to turn things around, but they snatched defeat from the jaws of victory. Gina Carano was a well-liked character and a vagina haver, and they fired her anyway because she didn't use the pronouns they wanted her to use, because all that pronoun stuff is obviously a fad. I think everyone over 25 probably is aware of that. Even AOC stopped using them. And yes, if somebody is using them, they're just lying to you. They're just pretending to be nice to you because they're afraid you're going to wig out or something. If you're a female, your pronouns take the feminine form. Anything else is just called pretending. So Gina Carano was sort of a keystone for Disney. They fired her and committed to following the woke dark side path, and Disney continued to fall apart. They're following it up on Solo, which was the audience clearly telling Disney, you're going in the wrong direction. They go, we're gonna double down and accelerate. So then any merchandise that had Gina Carano in it, or maybe even the character, had to be changed, like in 1984 style. The ship isn't Slave 1 anymore. For the slave trader, they renamed it Monkeypox and AIDS Sodomy. And Django and Bubba don't take slaves. They kidnap kids and force cross-sex hormones on them and sterilize them or something like that. So they had a new encyclopedia out that Disney is going with Pox Walks, Trans Furry, Otherkin, New World Order, Star Wars, where one mixed race group of Chase Bank, Google, Hut Space is fighting the blonde Aryan strawman empire. We're on the wrong side of the empire. Hashtag Vader did nothing wrong, much like democracy. If the rebellion got you to pox lesbians riding horses in space, then clearly the wrong side won. And I eagerly await Snow White 2025, I guess. They're delaying it, and I think it's going to be interesting. I might actually go see that. And I'll be the only one in the theater though. And the Daisy Ridley trilogy, because those are going to be atrocious messes, because they're planned out pre-Trump 2025. And I think everyone assumed that they're going to vote for Kamala and the country was going to eventually catch on to all this kind of woke propaganda. But now I suspect that they're going to go through it to try to dial down the woke a little bit, which you can see the previews of Snow White on YouTube, and it's impossible to do with Snow White because the movie where nobody is except for the incompetent prince, which is their standard default programming. It's okay. The one white guy in the movie is going to be white men are stupid in commercials. It's the Twitter account. Is going to be completely incompetent, like so much of Disney. What was the last Disney animation they did for their 100th anniversary, where it's some Poxwalks transferry lesbian main character, and then the evil king is, of course, not. Anyway, all this is weird for Snow White, at least, where you have a European story. I think it's a German story with Middle Easterners, Brazilians, Africans. So that's probably going to lose $50 million. You look at you can watch the previews. And like none of these people are from Europe, or none of these people are pure European, except for probably the one character who's going to be portrayed negatively. But with the Daisy Ridley movie, there's still time to save it because they just kind of started talking about it. If they want to save it, but I don't think they want to save it, which is awesome because I hope we get to see the Disney movie and streaming division of Disney collapse, and they just have to admit failure. They have the parks and cruise ships and merchandise sales, and that's not going away. But their movies, it's going to be amazing to watch those things. But they own these IPs. They have to do something. They have Marvel, Disney, Raiders, and a Pirates of the Caribbean. They have all these IPs. They should be printing money. All they had to do was continue with the vibe of like 2000 Disney, 2005 Disney. Just stay with that vibe. Give the original Pirates of the Caribbean. If you just stayed with that energy, Disney would be conquering the world. But they're not. Instead, you got this kind of Ewok version of Disney. So no, they don't want to save Disney. You're going to see Disney Plus will probably just be old streaming stuff from the 80s and 90s, because anything you liked about Disney Star Wars, they removed, and the things that alienated the audience, they just doubled down on. And it's like that with Amazon or Netflix as well, where 90% of Star Wars is non-Euro now, so they're marketing to an audience that doesn't exist. And it's the same with Rings of Power, Lord of the Rings, and Amazon. It has an audience. Lord of the Rings has an audience globally. But people want the original Lord of the Rings. They don't want Amazon's race-swapped Lord of the Rings, where suddenly this fantasy universe suddenly looks like downtown Los Angeles. That's not what people got on board with. They liked the original Lord of the Rings was a massive success, both the books and the movies by Peter Jackson, the interpretation, at least the Lord of the Rings interpretation movies, not the Hobbits. Because it followed the books fairly closely. It matched the audience expectations. That was the story that people fell in love with. And then Amazon comes along and goes, we're going to race swap all that? And people go, why? Oh, well, diversity and inclusion. Yeah, those aren't our values. We value the original story. If you want to tell a new fantasy story setting with your globalist AIDS and monkeypox values, by all means, write a new story and set it in some fantasy setting. They go, well, we can't do that. It's not just that they don't want to do it, but they can't do that because they're evil. They can't create. All they can do is subvert and corrupt. They're the darkness. So you end up with Rings of Power, and I don't know if anyone watched the second season. I guess I don't know. It can be interesting to see what they do with that, because they still have a few more seasons left to go. It's like, are they gonna? Because if they continue with it, they're just burning millions of dollars. Eventually, they're going to look at this and go, let's just cut our losses. Anyway, like, comment, subscribe. I'll see you guys all on the Odyssey and SubScribeStar.